Okay, so this is your review for test 2. As always on tests, we review some things that you've previously done, okay, to make sure you're not forgetting things because you're going to need to know everything for your finals, right? So one thing we want to review is finding the inverse. If you remember, these were the steps that I gave you to find your inverse. So step 1 says replace f of x with y. Well, in this case, it already says y equals. If it had said f of x equals, we would replace f of x with y, okay? Because remember, f of x is the same thing as y, right? They're equal to each other. They mean the same thing, okay? So step 1's already done. So we'll move on to step 2, which says switch x and y. So my x and y are going to switch places. Equal sign for minus 7 stays where they are. All I'm going to do is put x here where there was a y, and put y here where there was an x. Okay? So this was step 2. Step 1 was already done. And then step 3 is going to be to solve for y. We want to get y by itself. We had it by itself, but when they had to switch places, y is no longer by itself. Okay? So to get it by itself, first thing I'm going to do is cancel out this minus 7. Because it doesn't have a y, it doesn't need to be by the y. So to cancel out a minus 7, I do plus 7 to both sides. So it cancels out over there. And x plus 7, these are not like terms. This is an x, this one doesn't have an x, so we just keep it as x plus 7 equals a 4y. Okay? Now to get y by itself, we're going to divide both sides by 4. So we get y equals, you can leave it like this, x plus 7 divided by 4. And that is a perfectly fine way to write it. Another way to write it would be to say y equals, you know there's really a 1 in front of that x. They don't put the 1 there, but you know there's a 1 there. So we can say 1/4 x, and then 7 over 4. Okay? It's the same exact thing, they just split it up into 2 fractions instead of 1 fraction. So 1/4 x plus 7/4. Either way. All right, so example 2, we're starting out with a fraction, 2x plus 9 divided by 11, okay? We're also starting out with an f of x. So for step 1, to replace f of x with y, so this is the first step, we're gonna put y instead of f of x, okay? Step 2, we're gonna switch x and y, so x equals 2y plus 9 divided by 11, okay? And then step 3 is to solve for y. So in order to get y by itself, we have a fraction here. So I want to go ahead and make it not a fraction anymore. I want to cancel out this divided by 11. That's the part y'all don't like, right? It's fractions. So let's cancel it out by doing the opposite of dividing by 11, and we're going to multiply by 11. Okay, so 11 times x would give us 11x. And then 11 divided by 11, right? If you're multiplying by 11, divided by 11, they cancel out. So we get 11x equals 2y plus 9. And then it's just like we had before. To get y by itself, we're going to start by canceling out the plus 9 by doing the opposite and subtracting 9. These are not like terms. 11x minus 9 just stays as 11x minus 9. Okay. Divide both sides by 2. And you get y equals 11x minus 9 divided by 2. Perfectly fine way to write your answer. Okay? The other way you could write it, or it's the same thing if you put y equals on this side. Okay? Doesn't matter which side y equals is on. So I could say y equals, we have 11 over 2, x minus 9 over 2. Means the exact same thing. Either way is perfectly fine to write it. One thing I wanted to refresh your memory on that I almost forgot to do, sorry guys, is inverses is the opposite. Like inverse means opposite, if you remember that. It's been a while since we talked about inverses. But inverses means the opposite. So if you look at the original equation we started with, right? We were multiplying by 2. Well, the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So now down here, we're dividing by 2, right? So start off multiplying by 2, now we're dividing by 2. We started off adding 9, now we're subtracting 9. We started out dividing by 11, now we're multiplying by 11. So if you can remember that they're opposites, that will help you to kind of double check your answer, okay? Notice the 2 and the 11 just switched. One changed from multiplying to dividing, the other changed from dividing to multiplying, right? And then the 9 changed from plus 9 to minus 9. Okay, so this is the opposite function, the opposite equation from this equation. Okay, and then if we look up at the first example again, you'll see we had minus 7, and then our answer we have plus 7. Right? We went from multiplying by 4 to now dividing by 4. Right? Minus 7 became plus 7. Instead of multiplying by 4, we're dividing by 4, right? So they switched places, okay? We can also look at inverses on a graph. You will see one of these on your test, okay? So we are on Desmos.com. I have 2 functions in there, and I have the function y equals x. The reason for this function is because if you remember from the beginning of the year, your 2 functions, a function and its inverse, will reflect across the line y equals x, okay? So if you can see, if I just had this blue function, the red function becomes its reflection. If you reflected this across the green line, the y equals x line, it would flip to look like this. Same here, if you reflected this, it would reflect the opposite way like this. So to check if a function is an inverse or not, you would want to go to Desmos.com. You would want to graph them and graph the equation y equals x, okay? And see which ones are reflections of each other. So if you have multiple choice, you have lots of different ones, type them in, see which one makes it reflect. Or graph, if you have pictures of graphs, graph the function you're given, then create its inverse, graph that, and see what it would look like on the graph and compare with your graph answer choices. Okay, another quick thing I want to talk about that we haven't gone over in a little while is transformations. Transformations were really easy. You were just telling me how the graph was shifted from its parent function. So since we have a squared, that means my parent function is a quadratic. Your quadratic parent function is yx squared. So any negative sign or any number added is a transformation. We want to figure out how those different things are transforming our graph. So our parent function starts off looking like this, right? I guess I should have drawn it on a graph. So it starts off looking like that. This negative sign in front, just the negative, is going to cause it to reflect across the x-axis, okay? Well, this is your x-axis, so if you reflect it, it's now going to flip down, right? So just this negative is going to change your graph to now look like this, okay? The 2, just the 2, not worrying about the negative, just the 2. If it's greater than 1, remember it is a vertical stretch. So it has been stretched vertically, meaning it's gotten more narrow, okay? So I'll just add it to this graph. So now that 2 has made it get more narrow, it's skinnier, it's been stretched, right? If you get stretched or you stretch something, it gets skinnier, right? And then inside of these parentheses, when you subtract, subtraction shifts you right. Okay? The word shift. You're shifted right. And then when it's a plus sign on the outside, so since this was 3, sorry, right through shift 3. And then adding or subtracting on the outside is what shifts you up or down. If it's plus, then you shift up a 5. Okay? So our final graph, okay, we know it's been flipped down, it's gotten skinnier, it's gone right, where am I going? It's going right 3, and it's been shifted up. So it now look something kind of like that, okay? And the second example, so 1/3, it's less than 1, okay? Like 2 is greater than 1, so it's vertical stretch. This is less than 1, so this is a vertical compression. All right, it doesn't have a negative in front, so it's not reflected down, it's staying up. But vertical compression is going to cause it to kind of relax. So it's gonna get a little wider. Okay, it's not gonna be quite as narrow as this one, it's gonna get wider. Adding 5 inside of the parentheses cause it to shift left 5. And then subtracting on the outside would cause it to shift down 6. And that's it.